We're here with Tom Wright, UFC Canada president. Breakdown Jones versus Gustafsson. Why should the fans be excited to see these two go at it September 21st?
Well, there's a ton of reasons why fans should be excited for this fight. First and foremost, you've got the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the entire planet, one Jon Jones, who has only lost once in his entire career. He actually lost to Matt Hamill, and interestingly enough, he's fighting against Alex Gustafsson from Sweden, who's the number 2 contender, record of 15-1. Similar to Jon Jones, has lost only once in his career. I was to Phil Davis, but interestingly enough, Alex Gustafsson beat Matt Hamill, so there's a little bit of that kind of one-upmanship that's present. This is what we saw in Las Vegas on the weekend. Just shows why people should be excited about this fight, because while on paper a lot are thinking, this is Jon Jones, this is his 6th title defense. It'll be his 3rd time in Toronto defending the title. That he would be the odds-on favorite, but in our sport, the fact that it's unpredictable, anything can happen. And if you want to look in the dictionary under anything can happen, roll up UFC 162, the middleweight championship, and I tell you, anything can happen. So I think it's one of those ones where you want to be there to see what's going to happen.
What goes on behind the scenes when determining who headlines the card in Toronto? We're getting Jon Jones for the 3rd time in about 18 months, but great Canadian TJ is fighting in Milwaukee against Benson Henderson. Why is it not reversed?
It's one of those things that there's a whole host of different reasons why things happen the way they do happen, and you've got to look at some of these fighters after they've fought or they're on medical suspensions. Even winners go on medical suspension, as you well know. You have to look at sort of recovery from injuries. You take a look at the schedules, and you have to sort of think of. We've got 450 fighters that are under contract with us. We have about 35 events around the world. You've got to sort of fit all those elements. It's a giant jigsaw puzzle that I think Joe Silva and Sean Shelby and of course Dana White do a remarkable job at. So I'm thrilled that we've got the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter here. I'm thrilled that for the 3rd time we've got a double championship. We've got Barao versus Eddie Wineland. I mean, look at that. Those guys are supposed to fight in Winnipeg in last month, and now they're coming here. So these things happen, and I'm quite happy about it.
Any hints about what the fights that are going to get announced to balance out the card? Right now there's 7 on there. We got about 4 or 5 more to look forward to. Any comments? Any hints?
I haven't, but all sorts of stuff can happen. I mean, I really wasn't expecting Barao and Wineland. That sort of came out of left field a bit. So I'm happy about that. So I don't really know. And at some point you sort of have to say, we've got the best matchmakers in the business. We've got the best sort of leader in the business, in Dana White. They get this stuff right, and so I worry about the things that I'm responsible for, and matchmaking is not one of them, because boy, those guys do a great job.
Speaking of responsibilities, you do UFC Canada, Australia, and New Zealand.
Correct.
How's that working out for you? We haven't heard much out of New Zealand.
No, but interestingly enough, you'll start to hear more about it. I'm going down to that region in September. We actually have the Sydney tryouts for Tough Nations, Canada versus Australia. Those are happening in the first week of September, I think September 9th, 10th in Sydney. That trip I'm going to be heading over to New Zealand. I've got some meetings in Auckland, and in their capital, which is the city of Wellington. We've got some regulatory things we have to iron out down there. I want to check out some different venues. We'd love to take a UFC event to the city of Auckland, most likely. They've got a great venue there. That's a new venue. It was only like 6-7 years old. But these things take time. A lot of people forget that really as a sport, we're still not even a teenager. We're in our 12th year, even though we have our 20th anniversary coming up in November. In Las Vegas, that card that George St. Pierre and Johnny Hendricks will be headlining. The truth is, we've really only been a sport since 2001, when Zuffa took it over and started to run the regulation and put the rules and all those kinds of regulatory requirements in place. So we're young, and some of these markets just takes time to develop, and New Zealand's one of them. But we think there's been some great opportunity there. It's a great fight culture there, great sports country. They're another country that punches above its weight, so it'll be fun to do.
What is the most rewarding part of your job?
The most rewarding part of my job, that's a great question. I would say the most rewarding part of my job is the vast number of really, really interesting people I meet. From guys like Alex Gustafsson and John Jones to people in the media like you guys, to regular fans, to business partners. What I love about my job is the fact that it's a job in sports. It's a job that involves growing something. I mean, there aren't many opportunities that people have in their careers to be part of a senior team that's building a global sport and a global brand. It just doesn't happen that often. What was the last global sport that came along? What was the last global brand that came along that wasn't a technology brand? Those are really, really fun things to do, and if you love sport and you love working with people, I always tell my kids, if you find something you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. So this is
We've heard rumblings of Halifax, Edmonton, 14, 15. What's going on behind the scenes? Is there any other cities that are on the radar?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at Quebec City. We're looking at going back to Vancouver, potentially back to Calgary. I don't know if you mentioned Saskatoon. We're looking at that as well. You know, again, we've got a situation where we hold 30, 35 fights around the world, and you know, as many Canadian cities want fights. There's a bunch of American ones and Brazilian ones and Australian ones and European ones, and so you sort of have to. You talk about, you know, juggling the jigsaw puzzle of fighter matchmaking. You know, we've got a big world, and we've got to figure out, you know, where do we put all these fights that work well with time zones, with business partnerships we have with broadcasters and with venues. It's a big process to run a global sports league. There aren't that many global sports leagues when you think about it.
Thanks for your time.
Always a pleasure.
Cool.